the reality is not the expectation. It's like, it's so big. The mistletoe is in session.
What are you doing? Oh, what's going on?
I have a very good feeling about this one. There's some fat phobia going on here. I don't know many babies, so I don't know how distinctive they look from each other. If this was any more difficult to read, I don't think I would be enjoying it all that much. Hello everybody and welcome to the next installment of Is the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship Worth My Money? So if you guys are unfamiliar with this vlog series, I am going to link the playlist in the description box and also up above here. I do go into it in a lot of detail in the first installment. This one I think is our fourth installment actually? It is! So this was supposed to be the last one, but I have gotten a little bit behind. Today we are going to be reading the books from June, July and August. So there is going to be at least one more installment in this series before it comes to a point where I make a video kind of like evaluating the progress in the Goldsboro subscription so far and decide whether it is indeed worth my money. But the gist of this is that I am a subscriber to the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship monthly book only subscription, where you get a brand new hardback science fiction or fantasy release that is an exclusive edition that is signed and also numbered as a first edition. And because I pay for this subscription, I just really wanted to hold myself accountable to actually reading the books. When I made this series, I did not think it was actually going to come to a point where I considered cancelling my subscription. However, the goal that I kind of set myself is that I need at least half of the books that I'm reading for these vlogs to be 4 or 5 stars, and if you guys look at our progress so far, we're not doing too well. And the last 2 installments of this series, the second one was absolutely abysmal, the last one was okay and I expected it to go really bad, and I'm kind of worried about this one because what we're finding is my predictions are not like coming true. Like the reality is not the expectation, and I think I'm actually gonna like the next round of books. It's actually pretty good that we're gonna get at least one more round out of this series, because otherwise every single book that I read in this video would have to be 4 or 5 stars, and based on our previous experience I just truly do not think that that's likely. But let me introduce you guys to the books very briefly. The June book was Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro. This one is a historical fantasy that features magical children, and it is also the biggest one that I'm going to be reading in this video. I am very intimidated by this. The second one is The Final Strife by Sarah El-Arifi. I'm actually going to be buddy reading this one with Aaron from Booked and Busy as well, which should be fine because she's like the world's fastest reader. But this one is a adult fantasy that has Arabian and African mythology in it, and also has something to do with like people's blood, and like society is based on that. And then the final one, the August book, was Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. This one is a sci-fi, and it's about this guy who somehow got himself stuck in the like dinosaur era, and his daughter is in the modern day and she is trying to kind of find out what happens to her father, and I think she ends up there as well. So in terms of my predictions for this one, I do feel like there's potential for me to enjoy all of these. So I think I'm going to like The Final Strife the most. This one is the one that is most like what I typically read and enjoy, but we all know that when I say that, it never goes well. The one that typically I would think is going to be in the middle is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro. I don't like historical stories, but historical fantasy can sometimes hit for me in the case of things like The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. And also, in the last video, I fully expected to DNF The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield, and it turned out to be my favorite of the 3 that we read. And that one is like a super historical book about Marie Antoinette and her sister. I expected to absolutely despise it, and I just found it so captivating. So while I think that this one is going to fall in the middle for me, there is potential for this also to be my favorite of the 3. And then the one that I think I'm going to enjoy the least is Lost in Time, but I do still think I'm going to enjoy this because I've heard really good things about it. When I hauled this, when I've been talking about it, everybody's been telling me that they've actually really enjoyed this one, so I'm expecting good things. So I am going to be reading the books in chronological order, which means that I will be starting with the June book, Ordinary Monsters. Not too happy about starting with the biggest of the 3. This is what happened in the last one as well, but I mean, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. And I am already 20 pages into this one. I looked up last night whether this was young adult or adult, and I can 100% confirm that this is adult, because in the very first chapter we have a sexual assault and a miscarriage. I wouldn't say it's especially graphic, especially not with the sexual assault, and the miscarriage is very much like a line, but just to let you guys know if you are thinking of picking this one up. And so far so good. I mean, I'm 20 pages in, so I can't say a whole ton about it, but a lot of people said from the synopsis that this reminds them of X-Men. I'm not a superhero girl in most cases, so I cannot confirm, but it is giving me Umbrella Academy vibes, which is one of the only instances where I am a superhero girl, with the way in the first chapter we have this child whose mother is dead and he has like abilities. It's given Umbrella Academy. So it's December 1st and my last candle restock of 2022 is tomorrow. December 2nd, and I haven't made a single candle yet, so I'm gonna whiz through 120, I think I'm doing today, candles. Right now, this is all of the jars. So I haven't even whipped anything. I've done absolutely no prep, and I normally do this amount of candles. Like I normally do a full week's restock in 2 sittings. So wish me luck. I think it's gonna be a late one tonight.
I'd be like, what was the answer to the question? Was it in there?
It's
what?
The end of the year. Everywhere on TV, couples and Christmas trees, gift wrapping and cheer. Just the worst time to be without someone special. In all the movies there, kissing in the snow, holding hands and mittens, baking together at home. I like the movies when I'm walking in the snow, cold hands and mittens, eating gingerbread home alone. I dream of December nights, kissing under bright lights, snowflakes in my hair, carols playing in the air. I dream of December nights, kissing under bright lights, red bow in my hair, sleigh bells in the air. The only thing I'm missing is you. Stockings on fireplace, but in my living room, a single one with my name, knit sweaters and lace. Dressed up alone on the couch during cold winter days. In all the movies there, kissing in the snow, holding hands and mittens, baking together at home. I like the movies when I'm walking in the snow, cold hands and mittens, eating gingerbread home alone. I dream of December nights, kissing under bright lights, snowflakes in my hair, carols playing in the air. I dream of December nights, kissing under bright lights, red bow in my hair, sleigh bells in the air. The only thing I'm missing is you, darling, you.
Good afternoon. I have a couple of things to open up for you guys. This first one is from Amazon and it's also from Ash, so thank you very much, Ash. I do actually already know what this one is because I started opening it up in last week's vlog and it was broken. So Ash sent me a new one which isn't rattling like the other one was, which is a very good sign. So this is a wax melt warmer, one of the electric ones. The one that I have is like a black and grey one. This one is iridescent rainbow type one. And then you have your dish that you put your wax melt in that goes on the top. So thank you very much to Ash for that. It's never, oh, there we go. And the other thing I have is my bag of wool for next year's blanket. So I haven't spoken about this for ages and I'm gonna do like a full showing of it in my end of year stats video, I think would be the best one to show it in. But this year I made a genre blanket where I knit one row for every genre of book that I read. As you can see, if you guys remember me showing you this, whenever the last time was, it has grown significantly. So where is even the end? This is where we started in January. So this, our big orange block here, is the selection series by Kira Cass, and it's like, it's so big. I've lost the end again. I want to try and slide down one end of it so I can show it. I'm excited to see when I've cast off how massive it truly is. But like, she is enormous. And then this massive block here of red is the Saga comics that I read through in November. I do have one more row to add to this now actually, but the whole thing with this is that every time I read a book, I knit one row for the genre of the book that I read. I do group some together, so fantasy is one on its own, which is the beige, and then red is sci-fi, orange is contemporary and romance, green is fantasy, romance and paranormal, and then I can't even find any, there we go, brown is like thrillers and mysteries mainly, but also pretty much anything else because there's not many other genres I read outside of the ones I've already mentioned. So that can be like thriller, mystery, horror, that kind of thing. So because I've had such a good time with that this year, I 100% wanted to carry it forward and do it for next year as well, which meant that I needed some more wool. So Wool and the Gang had a 25% off Black Friday sale. I knew I needed the wool, so I thought I may as well indulge in 25% off. And this one was, or is, for my bedroom, which I still have not got around to sorting out, but the main colors in there, or the main color, is going to be dark green. So I chose colors that went well with that. And this year's, or next year's should I say, is going to be for this room. So I don't know what color is for what yet. Realistically, fantasy is always the most dominant color, and then fantasy, romance and romance tend to be equal and quite substantial, and then sci-fi and mystery tend to be like very infrequent throughout the blanket. So we have, it's all very monochromatic with like one pop of color, but we have charcoal, which is a good contender for like the bulk of it. We have frost, no, I went with ivory. So we have ivory white, which I think for the white, because I'm a very clumsy person, I want to use white for either sci-fi or thriller so that it's like very sporadic throughout the blanket. Brie is obsessed with wool. It is the bane of my existence. When she was teething, she took the beige ball of wool out of my knitting basket and ran around the room with it and covered it in blood. I was devastated because this is like 100% real wool. Get off, please. These aren't for you. This charcoal is actually darker than I thought it would be because this one is space black, which is also a contender for the bulk of the blanket. But now that this one is so dark, I thought this one would be slightly lighter. I'm not too sure. The one pop of color we have is Mustard Sally, because it's the only pop of color I have in this room apart from black, white and gray. And then the other, this one could be the bulk of it actually. The final color I have is tweed gray, which is more, this is just slightly lighter I guess than I thought the charcoal would be. So this is my color selection for next year's blanket. Looking at these, like the black and the charcoal are very similar, so I don't know what to do about that. Maybe if I use charcoal and white as accent, the mustard's going to be really prominent. I don't know, but I have like a month to decide, so it's fine.
Cold nips at your toes, wrap up in
So it is Saturday of what I really hope is going to be my last working weekend of the year, and my plan for today was to get ahead on all of my videos, edit a whole ton of stuff that I've already got filmed, and like schedule ahead so I can start getting ahead of myself in preparation for the excess of videos that I post in January, and also that I want a week off over Christmas. And as you guys will know from watching the last clip, I was having camera issues there that I wasn't aware of. So now instead of editing, I'm going to spend my time refilming everything that I filmed yesterday, including my wrap up, which was not a fun wrap up to film. It really wasn't going well and it took me like 90 minutes to do it. And also a sponsored insert. So yeah, nobody talked to me today. I'm not in the mood. I've only ever had to refilm one thing, which was my July wrap up in 2017, I think, because my phone corrupted the data on it. Or was it 2018? I think it was at that point that I decided to get a camera because I no longer trusted my phone to record anymore. So yeah, it's been a long ass time since I've had to refilm anything, and it's not a fun task. As you guys know, doing something again that you've already done once is never a good time.
Can you be mine for Christmas?
Good evening. It is 9:55 and I'm currently doing Patron sprints with Ashley, but I am now 218 pages into Ordinary Monsters. I've just got to part 3, which I think is going to be skipping back in time by a few years, and I have resisted updating you guys on this book up until this point because I still cannot really tell you what the plot of this is. We are definitely following magical children, and the book starts off the year after the year I'm about to go back to. So it starts off in 1974, I think. Yes, and then it hops forward to 18... Am I in the right century here? It starts in 1874 and then it goes to 1882, and then the section that I'm up to is about to go back to 1873, which I'm really excited about this section coming up. But we are following a couple of children with extraordinary abilities, and while this series is about an institute of such children, or I understood that it was about an institute of such children, we are not there yet. So it starts off by introducing you to these two children. One of them is found as a baby and he glows, and he is taken in by a woman who is escaping her employer. She takes him and passes him off as her own. And the second boy is a young black boy in America who can heal himself, and I think, did they take him in for theft? But he is being kept in a prison, and content warnings in here for racism, because he's essentially being regularly brutalized by the people, like the sheriff, and also by the people of the town, because he has this miraculous like healing ability. So there is an institute that takes these children in, and at this point I still don't know whether we can trust the institute, because there's people saying that they experiment horribly on children, and then there is the fact that there is no evidence from any of the characters at the minute that that is actually true. But these children are essentially taken by people who specifically hunt down orphans with magical abilities, they're called talents, and taken to this institute. Now, something happened 7 years prior to the narrative of the story, so is it 8 years? It's the 1873 timeline that I'm about to go into. Somebody who worked for the institute was corrupted and is now the bad guy of the story, and there's this other boy or man, I'm not sure of his age, who is also a talent, but there's something, either he has a talent that is inherently bad to start off with, or there's something terribly wrong with him and he is in league with this bad guy. The plot of the book so far in these 200 pages is that these two boys are being taken to the institute, but for some reason they are being hunted down by the bad guy who used to be part of the institute, and also his little creepy minion. And I believe at the point that I'm about to go back to in 1873, we find out what happened to the guy who is now the bad guy, which is something that I'm really interested in. I love me a villain origin story. We started out strong in this. I was really enjoying it, especially through the first couple of chapters. The writing, I was enjoying. There's a couple of places where the sentences seem to run on a little bit too long, where I'm a little bit unsure if I like it. For the most part, it is doing a really good job of creating this like slightly spooky, gothic, Victorian atmosphere. I really liked the variety of settings we had. I liked that we had this variety of characters, because we were reading about the children but also their caretakers. So there's the woman that took in the baby and was passing him off as her own. There's somebody that she was traveling with. There are the two people who are essentially headhunters for this institute. There is the woman who runs the institute. There's mention of the doctor of the institute, and then through part of this as well we also follow the creepy minion guy who is called Walter something, I think. So I was enjoying that variety of perspectives, and you guys know that I don't love me a historical story, especially actually when it comes to the Victorian period. I just feel like it's not necessarily overdone, but it's done a lot. And as somebody who doesn't like historical stuff, it holds less interest for me because it doesn't have that element of fascination that I guess time periods that I don't hear about so often has. In spite of that though, I was having a good time up until we got to the end of that second section, where I just felt like it was losing my interest a little bit. It was getting a little bit boring. I have to say that the events of this last section have reminded me a little bit of Alloy of Law, because while this isn't a Western, we do have that like rural American setting in part of this, and a great deal of the section that I've just read actually does take place on a train. If you guys have been following me recently, you will know that I didn't love Alloy of Law, and I will forever be upset by it. But yeah, I'm having very mixed feelings about it so far, because there are things that I'm really enjoying about it. I'm definitely intrigued. I just feel like we're not progressing to the things that I'm most intrigued about as quickly as I would like to, and we've just had like a big action scene that quite honestly wasn't as invested in, and I just want to get to the Institute. The next section seems promising to me as we're diving into the backstory of one of the characters, but I am hoping soon as well that we do get that Institute in here. Potentially, I feel like we're going to encounter the Institute in the past timeline first. I just want to know what the deal is, because I don't know if we can trust them, because the woman who ran it is a little bit suspicious as well, but also not suspicious. So I don't have a read on the situation, so I need answers.
So what I want to hear is you'll be mine for Christmas.
Fix your wigs, get your life together. This is how Peloton does after hours. In the early evening with a mug of hot tea. This is the holiday episode of LOL Cody.
Want to be mine for Christmas.
Me and Drew. We're moving in.
Fast, I hope your kisses last. Oh, you love me so. Can you be mine for Christmas? Can you be mine for Christmas?
Good morning. Your gal is feeling festive as fuck. So if you guys will follow me on Instagram last year, you will know. I need to go back and actually look how I did it. But over the period of however long it took me to finish up my Christmas orders last year, I was very slowly losing my mind over a series of days while watching pretty much any Christmas rom-com that I could get my hands on, and then rating them in my Instagram stories. So I'm about to start that again today. I don't think I'm going to get through as many as I did last year, which is sad because I'm shutting my shop on Monday. Like, this is the pack-in from the last restock, so I expect to have like a few orders come through between now and Monday, but nothing like what I have now, which I'm fingers crossed I'm hoping to get through today. I think I have 43. Oh no, I've got more because more things have sold since then. I've got like 50 orders, I think, somewhere between 43 and 50. So I am hoping to get through all of them today, but I am going to be watching a bunch of Christmas films while I do it. I think I'm definitely going to be starting off with the Lindsay Lohan and Chad Michael Murray one as well, which I'm super hyped for because I mean Lindsay Lohan and Chad Michael Murray. So I actually think that my work setup is really cute today because I have assembled it all from scratch, so it's less haphazard than normal. Let me just shuffle backwards so I can show you guys. All of these candles need labeling. I haven't even started yet. Like I've cut all of the labels, so that's good, but I'm behind because normally I would try and get a lot of this done on Friday, but editing was a little bit of a nightmare over the weekend. So we have sprints that are going to be going on with here. I'm doing Patreon sprints with Leanne today, and possibly, depending how I feel, Patreon sprints with Ashley this evening. My iPad is for the Christmas movies. It got all of my like scissors, tape, postage labels, etc. behind there. Hydration station and a bag for my rubbish and spare large boxes because I think I've got a couple of like pretty big orders. So yeah, we all good to go. The mistletoe is in session, and I don't know if I see any spectacular Christmas films over this period. I'll let you guys know which ones they are. Would definitely recommend the Nina Dobrev one, which I think, is it called Love Hard? And also the one with Emma Robertson, which is Holiday, which isn't necessarily a Christmas film because it has all of the holidays in, but from all of the movies that I watched last year, and I think I watched a good like 8 at least, those were definitely my 2 favorites, and I may even do a cheeky rewatch of those 2 this year.
Alone it's Christmas, but I won't wait till next year to try and fill the distance we've had with decorations. My bag is taking it slow, won't work in time. It's only so long for Christmas lights. It can't be a song you sing. Sometimes I need you to sing it for your whole life. So let me be your family this Christmas, and let this be the season that you've been waiting for. Let me be your family this Christmas. Give to you myself this year, I promise I'm yours. This year you've left me wondering just how you're feeling, and I want you to know my doubts about his real life.
What are you doing?
You're walking barefoot in the San Diego snow. I wanna make
So I think it's about time that I bring you guys a little bit of an update. The Christmas movies, actually, to start off with, neither of them were very good. They both had very like cheesy, Hallmarky movie vibes. I watched the Lindsay Lohan one and the Chad Michael Murray and Jessica Lowndes one. And so the Lindsay Lohan was slightly better than Chad Michael Murray. It was more upbeat, I guess, more funny and more along the lines of The Princess Switch. But the Chad Michael Murray one, oh my god, it was like a really bad Hallmark movie with a really bad plot, and the highlight of the movie was Chad Michael Murray pretending to ice skate. So neither of those went very well, and I think tomorrow I may end up watching 1 or 2 more, so we'll see if I can find a hit for this year. But in terms of the book, it's taken me a while to get through this one, and I gotta say guys, I am pretty bored. I'm on page 428, so I have about 220 pages left, and we did make it to the Institute eventually. Not when I thought we were going to, it took a little while longer, but we did make it there eventually, and things have picked up, I guess, a little bit since then. This book could still go either way for me in terms of enjoyment, because I am pretty bored and it is a bit of a slog, but if the ending pulls through and ends up being really good, this could be a book that in hindsight I have very positive thoughts on, because atmospherically it's on point. The writing, it just has a little bit of something that I can't put my finger on that I'm not a fan of, but aside from that, I'm enjoying it and the way that it's building atmosphere. I feel like my main kind of issue with this is that because of the way that it's written and because there's so many characters, I don't feel particularly connected to anybody. I'd say if I'm connected to anybody the most, it would be the 2 talents, Charlie and Marlo, but there are adult characters in here as well that are main characters, and I'm just not really vibing with them. I also don't like how the author describes the female characters in here. I can't remember if I mentioned it in the last clip, but I did notice at one point that somebody is described as having like heavy breasts, and while it's not inaccurate, especially for someone like me, I don't think I've ever seen a female author describe a character as having heavy breasts or being heavy breasted, and it's just a little bit grim, and I don't know why, because like accurate for a lot of people, you know, but it's just stuff like that, and the way that the women are described as like quite dowdy and dumpy and like physically dominating, but not in an attractive way. I think that's the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like physically domineering as a woman, but the way that they're portrayed in here, it's like I'm not feeling good about them. Like, I don't feel like it's a nice way to describe women. So there's little things in the writing that like I'm not quite gelling with, but atmospherically like it is on point. So depending on how the end of this plays out, I could end up actually enjoying it, but right now it's just a little bit of a slog. I still don't really know what the overarching plot we're going with here is, aside from like get rid of the bad guy. So I'm kind of torn. It's going to be a trilogy, as well, I think, which is interesting because with me not knowing what the plot of this book is, I have no idea what the scope of like an actual series could be. And I guess what I'm looking for from the ending is something that makes how slow the rest of this book is like worth it. Like, you need to have a good plot to have this many pages, otherwise, like, what's the point? Good morning. My life is a mess because I'm just constantly waiting on deliveries of things, and these were held up at the printer. So this, I'm really excited but also really nervous to see these because these are my bookmarks for my patrons for December, which I can't show you guys obviously because they're a surprise for my patrons, and also my Catch Up Book Club bookmarks because I have been making more bookmarks just generally over this year for my patrons, but then as you guys know we also had a Bookathon one, and I also did one for my Patreon book club, the Alpha Ho book club, so I thought I had to do Catch Up Book Club as well. And this one is a little bit different. I tend to do just foil on like kind of a plain background. These two are more like something printed in the background and then foiled over the top. So I'm nervous because obviously like I'm not super experienced with printing, so I don't know how the colours are going to turn out. I'm just going to spy my Patreon one first and see how it looks. Oh my god, I can't. I've just been prepping the postage label so I can send these. It's so good. But once again, did print slightly darker than I anticipated it doing, which is what I was scared about for the Catch Up Book Club one. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Okay, yeah, so once again, print is slightly darker than I expected it to. I was doing the thing like, because it's got different text on both sides, and I was trying to do the thing where like it flips and you can read them both, and I just wasn't quite getting it. But we have kind of like a background that I made that's inspired by the background of the first books with Catch Up Book Club on. It was this blood that I was worried about. I was worried about it printing kind of grey, and it is a very, very dark red, but that's after me lightening it a little bit as well. So I'm glad that I did actually check with the printers that it would print a kind of red, because it is like, it's very brown. And then on the back here, it says First Laura Long. So these are going to be going on sale in January. It's kind of a shitty time because I was going to do candles as well, but like I'm closing on Monday and the announcement video is not going up until after Monday. So everything has to go on sale in January, and because of that I don't have time to turn around a candle, which is fine. But yeah, you guys can get your bookmarks in January for these. I think it's going to be towards the end. I need to actually pick a date for that. It's just I'm going to see in the 1975 3 times in January, which kind of messes around with my normal schedule a little bit. Oh, in January as well, I'm going to be putting on sale all of the Patreon bookmarks from throughout last year, like everything that I have left over, because obviously I buy them so that I have more bookmarks than I have patrons in case any go missing, so that I can have some, so I can give some to my friends and things like that. So they will all be going on sale as well if you've seen any throughout the year that you want. I think I'm going to do a few bundles and then do the rest individually, but I still need to go through and like count up how much of each I have. So yeah, keep an eye out for that as well if you are at all interested. So my Christmas jumpers have also arrived, and I'm so excited because like I said, I'm thinking about filming at some point soon, and I really wanted these so that I can get some use out of them. They are like, they're from an Etsy shop, and the Etsy shop is going to be closed by the point you see this video because run up to Christmas, but I will put it in the description box. They essentially do embroidered Taylor Swift things. I did get my Halloween jumper from them, which I showed you guys way back in October, which was the one that said "What a Ghostly Scene." I just wanted one Christmas jumper, but I couldn't resist and I ended up with 2. Oh my god, the first one is the one that I wanted the most. It's a little bit of an interesting color for me. You guys know I don't usually wear bright colors, mainly because I'm really bad for like spilling. This jumper, I've had this jumper for about 10 years. There has been a stain on Father Christmas for about 8 of those years, but it has all the bells and stuff and I love it too much to get rid of it, and I just cannot get this stain out. But this one is 'Tis the Damn Season, and it is, oh, it's gonna be a nice big cozy one as well. I think I need to go down a size in sweatshirts. I'm at the point now where the size that I've had for a long time is like big and cozy and toasty, but if I went down a size it'd be just like a little bit, not tight, but just not quite big enough. So it's like a really awkward place that I'm in right now. But I got 'Tis the Damn Season, which was the first one that I wanted. And the thing is though, is 'Tis the Damn Season wouldn't necessarily say that it's a Christmas song. So I had to get Christmas Tree Farm as well in this gorgeous green color. I'm actually really glad that I picked green because I forgot what color I ordered. I know I got the beige in this, but oh my god, I love that green. You're gonna see me as well, like before you see this vlog and see what they are and where I got them from, you're probably gonna see me in them in other videos. But I would say about these, like they're not the cheapest things ever because they are embroidered, but considering that they're embroidered and that the quality I would say is pretty decent, I think that the pricing on them is really reasonable. So I finished the book and sadly I don't feel like the ending was worth everything that came up to it. There wasn't anything spectacular about the ending that kind of overshadowed the fact that this was pretty boring from 100 pages in right up until the end. It was just very like standard ending. It had no like wow factor, and I feel like that is the way that I would describe this book, because I ended up rating it a very low 3-star because there were things about it that I really liked, but there was just something missing from this, that it wasn't really doing anything in a way that I loved. It was just all okay, and then we had that really slow pacing and boring sections throughout. That means that this is just a very lackluster book from me, which is sad because with the elements that we have here, I feel like I should have enjoyed it more than I did, but sadly I did not. I think that there was just no hook in this book, which rhymes. So there were a lot of like good elements, but nothing good enough to keep me invested in this story. So the last 200 pages, actually, I was just kind of wishing that it was over already. So sadly not a hit from Ordinary Monsters, which is a shame because while I said I think the Final Strife is going to be my favorite, I was kind of expecting this to jump out and surprise me based on how much I enjoyed the embroidered book when I really thought nothing of that book either. Which means that the next book, I'm scared of reading this. The next book I'm going to be picking up is The Final Strife by Sarah El-Arifi. This one is an adult fantasy that blends Arabian and African mythology together, and the only thing I know about the actual plot of this off the top of my head, because as you can tell my copy does not have a synopsis, is that we are following I think 3 women from different positions in society, and the society or the story revolves around the colour of people's blood. So I did actually want to make a start on this morning while I was drinking coffee. I ended up doing a little bit of admin instead. I will say though, I've read the first paragraph and the writing style is already very promising. I have a very good feeling about this one. So I am debuting the 'Tis the Damn Season sweatshirt today, and we are actually going to be heading out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to be finishing my Christmas shopping. I only actually have my dad, his wife, and 1.5 of my friends to shop for, so hopefully York is a real nice city, lots of like indie boutique kind of places, and hopefully I will find what I'm looking for. I mean, I know what I want from my dad's wife, and I can get bits for people. My dad is proven to be a little bit of a struggle. He's always been impossible to buy for, so I feel like I'm gonna struggle with that one, and I'm out of ideas. You know when you've been buying gifts for people for so long that you run out of inspiration for gifts, and I pride myself on being a really good gift giver, and I feel like I'm trying to live up to my own expectations of my own superior gift giving. That is where I will be for the rest of the day. I also have the Buffy watch along tonight. We're watching episodes 4 through 6 of season 2, which I think, are we watching the Halloween episode tonight, which is one of my favorite episodes ever and the introduction of one of my favorite characters ever. I'm not sure how much reading I'm going to get done, but based on that first paragraph, super hyped to be getting into this one. I have a dentist appointment in 35 minutes that I really don't want to go to. So to distract myself from thinking about that, I'm gonna bring you guys a little bit of an update because I do have a Waterstones parcel that just arrived. I think this is a pre-order. And I also have an update on the Final Strife, which I'm just over 100 pages into. So we'll just crack this open first. I think that it is Olivia Blake's new book, which as far as I'm aware was released on the 29th of November, and it has just arrived. And I know that there's Royal Mail strikes and stuff, but Waterstones, like, seriously get your shit together. It has been 6 months now. The other order that I placed in June where books still haven't arrived, I'm kind of like feeling more lenient with that one, although like I'm totally aware that I do bring it up all the time because I still think it's ridiculous for a company as large as Waterstones. But like that one was placed at the point where they had like big problems. Why do you still have problems in December? But this one is Alone With You in the Ether by Olivia Blake, which I think is a little bit of a romance. This one is the Waterstones exclusive edition. I know Illumicrate have just announced an edition as well, but I don't think it's different enough from this one for me to bother that much about it. Like, this one's perfectly fine. It has a really nice sprayed edge on it as well, and it's nice to see that Waterstones have finally upped their game with their customization, bringing them now in line with like Fairy Loot and Illumicrate with the level of customization they can do on their editions. So this one, I'm pretty sure, I didn't know that this was an actual release. I thought this was like some sort of novella that Olivia Blake was writing, but I do really like the Atlas 6. So during the Black Friday sale, I noticed that Olivia Blake has a whole ton of books coming out, all with really interesting synopses, so I pre-ordered all of them. This one is about two people who meet in an art institute. One of them is a doctoral student who, wow, manages his destructive thoughts with compulsive calculations about time travel. And then the female main character is a bipolar counterfeit artist undergoing court order psychotherapy. What I've expected from this, it is, I think, like a romance, but what I kind of expect from this is it to be super artsy, a little bit pretentious, and beautifully written, kind of like an adult John Green, but more like beautifully written. So I'm hoping it delivers those expectations that I have based just on the fact that it's a kind of short romance written by Olivia Blake, and hopefully I can get to that one soon, which I know I say all the time, but like it's really bugging me at the minute how much I really want to read, and then when it comes to me having time to read, it's just not happening for me. I'm just really unfocused and distracted. That being said, it's been 3 days and I'm only 120-ish pages into this, and I have very mixed feelings about it so far. I'm on page 128 and I really like it, but also there's some things that I really don't like about it, and a couple of elements that are also a little bit sus. So in this one, we are following 3 women who are from different blood types in this world. So it's kind of like your typical fantasy time period, like no technology, that kind of thing. It's inspired, as I said before, by African and Arabian mythology, which I'm not familiar enough with to like tell you guys what elements of the story are inspired by specific myths. But the first character we follow is called Scylla, and she is from the blue bloods. Let me take a step back. There are 3 types of blood in this world. Right at the bottom we have people with translucent blood, and they have been punished for a rebellion that was carried out by their people hundreds of years ago. So now when they're born, they have their tongues and their hands cut off, and they're relegated to like being servants. Above them we have the dusters, who are blue bloods, and they are just like kind of an underclass. I'd say that they're lower than like a normal person. They're more like a peasant class. But then we don't really have an average citizen, because then we go to the people at the top, who are the embers with red blood, and they rule everything as usual. They're the nobility, and I think that they also do make up like the general civilians of the world. So right in the beginning, this story is told about, I think, 18 children who were taken from ember homes and supplanted with duster babies, and the 18 red-blooded children were taken and raised by the lower classes to eventually break apart the empire. So they have this like esteemed red blood, but they're raised to believe in the things that the lower classes believe in, and essentially see how unfair they're treated. So from the very beginning, I'm only 120 pages in, so like I couldn't even spoil this book really for you if I wanted to. From the very beginning, it is very clear that the main character is dancing around the fact that she is one of these 18 stolen children. It is so obvious. Luckily, about 50 pages in, you do get that revealed, so you don't have to deal with that for too long, but there's just no suspense It's just not suspenseful at all. So that main character, Scylla, is raised as a duster. She has trauma in her past, so she's also an addict and she consumes this drug a lot. Like, she's very addicted to this drug so that she kind of forgets her purpose, which was to break apart this empire, because it's very clear that something happened in the past to the rest of the children that were taken. So the whole point of her existence was to enter this series of trials that allows you to become a warden or like a ruler of this land. And there's also some mystery going on with how they believe that the island or the land that they live in is the only one, but it's possible that there was a world that existed that they don't know about, and they kind of want to know why they don't know about that. We're also following a woman from the, I think they're the ghostings, which is the lowest class, who is intriguing me so far because we haven't seen her too much and I don't know too much about her, but she does seem to kind of know what's going on with everyone, and I would like to know why. And then we also follow, oh my god, the most vapid fairy princess from the Ember class, who is the daughter of one of the wardens. So essentially we are following these three characters as they're getting into position to potentially overthrow the empire. And while I'm enjoying this, I'm really liking the writing and the world building. I'm really sus about the characters and how they very much seem to have been forced into the places they need to be for the story to carry out, with the main character Scylla being so entitled and also just doing stupid shit, which kind of makes sense within her attitude, but the way that there's always someone there to save her ass considering her position in society, I feel like is very unbelievable. And the way that she's been maneuvered to be in the place where she needs to be for the rest of this story to carry out, I'm finding to be a little bit unbelievable. The character of Anoa, who is the daughter of the warden, there's some fat phobia going on here, and I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because it could be development throughout, but just the way that things are placed in here as statement of fact instead of as opinion makes me feel not great about it. So when we first meet her, she's stuffing food in her pockets and carrying it around, and it never once says that she's plus side, it always just implies it. The second instance we have is that she gets up in a schoolroom, bumps the desk with her hip, and then she's sweaty and out of breath by the time she gets to the front of class, to which I say, how big is this class? We also have a character who kind of disregards her from the strength trials in this world, implying that she's unfit, which to be fair she is, but I feel like this is being directly related to her fatness in a way that is just giving me the ick a little bit. Now that I've got a little bit further into the story, I see how we are developing Anoa as an unfit character, but I don't like the way that she's being shamed as we establish this. And also, fatness does not equate to unfitness. I am fitter than the majority of my thinner friends because I work out all the time. So I don't know. It's making me feel weird now that we're coming into a position where Anoa is going to become more fit. I am interested to see how that's going to play out, but just the way that it's been portrayed in these early stages, it's made me feel really weird because it's not like there are people shaming her, but in the instance of her being sweaty and out of breath walking to the front of the class, that was a statement of fact. Like, that is something that happened, not somebody's opinion of like viewing her walking to the front of the class, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm really into the story despite all of these things, and I do really like the world building and the narrative. So I am hoping that the characters pull through for me, it becomes a little less convenient, and that this fat phobia turns out not to be fat phobia, because if all of that stuff does iron itself out, then this book definitely has the makings of a 4 or 5 star read for me, and you guys know that I need that right now.
Verses I remember, it's been the mistletoe kiss. I'll keep on writing this, I'll keep on dreaming away.
So I am now 242 I think pages into the Final Strife, and I'm still really enjoying it. The characters are growing on me, especially as like their relationship between each other develops, I guess. I still really like the writing in here and also the world building. The plot does have a series of trials in it, and it's reminding me a little bit of An Ember in the Ashes, like that, like the first book in that series. And the world is also reminding me a little bit of Rage of Dragons, where we have this kind of like island where the main character lives, and then we have like a mysterious mainland where the knowledge about the mainland from the people of the island is very limited, but they are kind of like a mysterious enemy land. I think that we're going to get some betrayals in here as well, which I'm really looking forward to, especially based on like where the story is at now. So far so good, or it would be so far so good if the fat phobia wasn't continuing. And I'm trying so hard to make excuses for why this book is so fat phobic. Every time I do, there's another instance of fat phobia, and it's getting harder and harder to kind of like explain it away. So at the beginning, when we had the stuff with the stuffing food in the pockets, we also had Honor being sweaty and out of breath walking to the front of the class. You could say maybe the author, because that's what I thought. I thought the author was trying to say that she was fat without saying that she's fat, because there's no physical description of her until later on. And all anybody really says about her anyway is that she's curvy. Also, we're trying to establish that she's unfit, which, I mean, fair, she is. A lot of the beginning of her character story is her becoming fitter. We also have instances of fat phobia that make sense in terms of villainous or just generally not nice characters being fat phobic. Like Honor's abusive mother says that she doesn't want her wearing swimsuits. She's a villainous character, she's an abusive. It makes sense that she would use her daughter's fatness against her or like make fun of her for being fat. But what doesn't make sense is comparing the girl to a lump of lard for absolutely no reason. But lard is something that has been used in the past as an insult towards fat people, because lard is fat. Just using that term, like standing around like a lump of lard, when it isn't even necessary, it's not even relating, like the sentence has nothing to do with her being fat. She's scared of going out into a storm that literally strips your flesh from your bones. And she's just stood thinking twice whether she should go outside, and she's compared to a lump of lard. There was also a little bit earlier in the book, within the last 100 pages, that I thought was a little bit dubious, had me raising my eyebrows, where she's compared to a steaming dumpling. Once again, dumplings are something that are used to describe, like, compared to fat people, or fat people are compared to dumplings. So it's just like, it's an interesting choice, and the characters in themselves, apart from those villainous ones, aren't fat phobic. Like, the main character pretty frequently, or like at least recently, has said that Honor is sexy and curvy and that she loves her curves, and other characters have also said that. It's the author that's using like fat phobic language, and it's so bizarre. It's so weird, because normally you would have characters being fat phobic and maybe it's not addressed or questioned, and then some people would criticize that for being fat phobic. That's kind of happening in here, but it makes sense with the characters that it is. But it's the text outside of opinion and the text outside of dialogue that is fat phobic. And it's really putting me off, because otherwise I'm having a really good time with this book. I haven't enjoyed a great deal of books in the last couple of months, and this is one that I'm really into. I'm enjoying the reading experience. I love the world building, the writing style. The plot is a little bit not predictable, but like I can see the author introducing devices, so I know kind of how they're going to play out later on. The characters' starts were a little bit convenient, very dubious. A couple of situations not really realistic, but I think it's good. I think it's immersive. I'm enjoying myself, and there's just this one niggly thing over and over and over again that keeps recurring throughout the book in different instances. That's just really annoying me. So I just wanted to pop in and talk to you guys about that, because I was going to make a list or something of all of the kind of like oddly fat phobic things I found in here, but then I couldn't be bothered going back through the book and literally finding them. So I just wanted to pop in and talk to you guys about the dumpling and the lump of lard before I forgot about them, just in case I need to come back to it later for any reason. And I think it snowed a little bit in the night, although not very much. So Brie has obviously never seen snow before. Ready? Come here. Oh, baby, get down. What is it? That's all fluffy.
I wanna make you feel something familiar. I celebrate you. God did his thing with you. Don't be a stranger, be my date. Without you, this ain't a holiday.
Okay, it's actually properly snowing now. So we're gonna take it to play. Come on. Come on. What's happening? What's going on? What's going on, baby? No? No more? Come on. Hey. So I've just finished finished sprints with my patrons in my fancy new streaming setup. I did also get a new office chair because I discussed in a vlog last week or the week before that I actually feel like I read more if I sit at a desk, so I wanted to give myself a chair that was comfortable enough to sit in while I read. Especially, I probably won't do it if I'm not sprinting. Maybe it'll make sprints more productive. I don't know. I've read quite a bit today, and I have also just finished The Final Strife by Sarah Elarifi. I liked it, but it definitely wasn't perfect. So I am pleased to let you guys know that the fat phobia, as far as I'm aware, is non-existent after Lardgate. Like, after Honora is compared to a lump of lard, there is no more like negative anything towards fat people present in this book, which is great because I was really enjoying it, and that was just a really, like, it was upsetting me. It was disappointing that it was contained in the context that it is, because this book celebrates so many marginalized groups of people. It discusses disability and addiction. There's a lot of queer characters in here. So the fat phobia was just really odd to me, especially in the way that it was kind of like a slip, like it wasn't intentional fat phobia, which is worse in my opinion because it implies a bias on behalf of the author. I'm not saying that's true, just that's how it reads to me when it was embedded in the text in ways that it was in here, because there's a celebration of Honora's curves in here and the fact that she's a plus size character, which is completely at odds with the few instances of fat phobia that I found in here. So that became a non-issue for the second half of the book. And I will say that as we got to the end, there were a couple more instances of conveniences, things not quite adding up if you looked at them too closely. As I mentioned, this book hinges on, I think it's 12 kids that were swapped like within different blood types so that the kids could be raised like red-blooded but with the heart of like a blue blood. That was fair enough, swapping babies. I imagine their parents would be able to tell the difference. I don't know many babies, so I don't know how distinctive they look from each other. They do all look the same to me, but I imagine their own parents could tell that they weren't their child. But I imagine a lot of people who'd only seen the baby a couple of times, was like more distantly related to the baby, only saw the baby at special occasions, wouldn't necessarily notice that that baby wasn't the same baby it was before. However, when they're 2-year-olds, I feel like 2-year-olds are distinctive. 2-year-olds are already starting to look like people. And at some point in this book, it was mentioned that at least one of the children, I don't know if they were all the same age, but at least one of them was 2 years old, which means that they were not passable to people. Like, the people who were around them all the time that saw them day to day would notice that that wasn't the same child. So there's just little bits like that where if you look at it too closely, it's like, actually no, that doesn't quite make sense. But there were a couple of plot twists towards the end of here that really took me by surprise, especially some that are setting up the next book. And I feel like this is going to be like a typical fantasy trilogy, I guess, where the first book has quite an isolated plot. In here we have people training to become the next disciple who work under the warden. So there's 4 wardens in the world. They each have a disciple, and every 10 years the wardens change, so the disciple becomes the warden, and they hold a series of trials to choose who the next disciple is going to be. So a lot of the plot of this book and the timeline of this book takes place around this series of trials, but you can tell with the way that it branches out ready for the next book that it's going to be very different in plot structure. And also there were a couple of threads in here that I actually expected to come into fruition in this book that were kind of very much hinted at being explored a lot in the next books in the series. So I'm very excited for the next book because some of my favorite things in here, something that Sarah Elarifi does in here, which I love in fantasy, is she provides a very rich, very detailed, very complex fantasy world, which I think is why I was just immediately enjoying this as soon as I started it. There's so much going on here that you can tell, even if you don't know what the plot twists are going to be, you can tell that at least some of the elements are thought out and well constructed enough to have decent payoff at some point. Like, this world has been thought about, and that is what I really love about fantasy. So I'm very much excited for the sequel. Really just put off by those not very few, because there was enough that it was noticeable and I couldn't brush it under the rug kind of thing, but the instances of fat phobia, and I know like people in my comments are gonna say, "Oh, nose curves are celebrated. Sarah Elarifi isn't fat phobic because like characters can be fat phobic and they're bad characters." Yes, you're right, but that is not what I was highlighting within this book. I was highlighting random bits of description that were comparing her to things like a lump of lard and a round dumpling. So fight me if you want. I read what I read. But 4 stars to this one. Really enjoyed it, and I hope that Goldsboro actually do a matching edition, because I haven't bought any sequels yet. I was tempted to buy All of Us Villains, but I was sent a finished copy, or All of Our Demise as a sequel, but I was sent a finished copy by the publisher, so I didn't get the Goldsboro version. I would buy a Goldsboro sequel to this. I also buddy read this one with Aaron, which I don't think I mentioned throughout this, but I may also, I don't know if she's decided yet, I may also be buddy reading the final book of this video with Aaron as well. And that last book is About Time by, no, I keep saying it's about time, it's not. It's Lost in Time by E.G. Riddle, which is about time travel. It's about a guy who's lost in the dinosaur time, and it's about his daughter in present day who's trying to find out what happened to her father. Gorgeous spread edge on this one, and I've heard good things about this. I was intrigued about this. Sci-Fi sometimes really has the power to suck me in. Then Aaron just mentioned that in the synopsis somewhere, I'm guessing it's more of like, you know, blurbs from other people, but oh, I didn't realize it had that, or maybe I did but I'd forgotten. It's been said somewhere that it's like a fast-paced murder mystery, which has completely put me off. So that's not what I expected from this. It's not what I wanted from this or from anything. So I'm depending on how it plays out, I could enjoy it, but those elements are definitely not doing anything for me right now. Good morning. I'm having a bit of a pajama day today, but not actually a relaxing one. I'm just going to try and edit as much of this vlog as possible, because I have already done some. I started it on Friday, but without having imported all of the footage, we were already at 2 hours, so I was just feeling a bit panicky about it. My to-do list has not been getting any smaller over the last week, so I feel like I'm wading through mud right now. Like, I have 3 videos that I need to make, including this vlog, before Christmas, and I've had those 3 videos to do since at least Tuesday, and not a single one has been completed. So today I woke up and just thought, keep your pajamas on, get downstairs, edit as much as possible, and also read as much as possible, because I am currently reading Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. Now, what I do want to say about this is that it is an extremely fast read, because I've put very little effort into actually reading this book, and I'm already 136 pages into it. It is what I expected it to be, but it doesn't start out, I guess, the way that I expected it to be. Like, the story isn't set up as I imagined it would be. So the first thing I want to say about this is that I do not like the writing style, and I have not liked the writing style the entire time that I've been reading this. It is extremely dialogue heavy and extremely reliant on the dialogue, very similar to how like Wattpad stories were written back in the day. And because it's so reliant on the dialogue, a lot of the dialogue then becomes redundant, because it's mimicking a conversational style where people will like say things back and forth, and like you might say, I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday and then I'm going to the market on Friday, and I'd say like, oh, so your doctor's appointment is on Thursday. So I've just repeated what you said, which makes sense in terms of a conversation, but gets tedious within a book. That being said, I am finding the plot compelling. This is a very plot-driven book. I know nothing about the characters. It very much sets them up as like, here are these 6 people, these are their names, these are their jobs. But like, I couldn't tell you what anybody looks like in here, because there's no description of anything. It explains everything within the dialogue, so there's no kind of like a backstory really going on here. It doesn't like elaborate very much on truly anything. So the plot of this is that we're following this man called Sam, and it starts off where he's visiting his wife's grave with his children, and then he's arrested because a woman called Nora has been murdered. Him and his daughter were the last people who were inside her house. Sam and Nora were dating, and they went to her house to tell his daughter that they were dating, and she flew off the handle. She ended up smashing something. She got cut, the woman got cut, so there's DNA all over the place. And then the girl left in a fit of rage with her father. The day after, somebody found her dead. They were the last people who were in her house. Because this doesn't explain anything in the background, you're finding things out as they're unfolding. So we're finding out that Sam is a scientist. He's part of this group called the Absalom 6, who invented this thing called Absalom, which is a time machine that is very unpredictable. So they can't use it with any precision, and the only use that they have for it is to transport prisoners back in time to the dinosaur age, so that they can no longer be a part of society and be a menace to society. So the irony of this is that this is Sam's fate now, that he has been framed for this murder. He gets a mysterious letter that tells him to confess, and so he does, and his daughter is left in that she's 19, but she is left with one of the Absalom 6, because they were Sam's closest friends along with her little brother, and she is staying behind and with one of the Absalom 6, Danielle, trying to figure out who actually killed Nora. Now, as I said when I picked this up, I don't like fast-paced books and I don't like murder mysteries. I am enjoying this, but I think that the answer is way too predictable. We are dealing with time travel here. I feel like it's very possible that some element of the time travel influenced the death of this woman, because the book is about time travel, and the whole like motive for death, people think, is that one of the Absalom 6 had invented Absalom 2, which I don't know what it is as the reader yet, so that's a little bit of a mystery, but we do know that the woman who died directly opposed it. So I think that something to do with this new invention, which likely has something to do with time travel, played a part in somebody being able to time travel to her house, kill her, and time travel out without anybody find it out. I also think that the Absalom 6 are the main suspects, so it's kind of like I can't remember what it's called, but you know, like And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is you have a limited number of suspects because everyone was there at the time and then they're being picked off one by one. It has that feel to it where like the Absalom 6 or the Absalom 4, I guess, because one's dead and one's Sam, have been laid out as the suspects. So it's about which one of those do you think it is? Is it one of them? I don't know. Is it all of them? Is it not about Nora? Did they kill Nora so that they could send Sam back into the past to do something for them? I don't know. But I am having a good time with the plot, which is surprising. It is gripping my attention. And something that is really good about this, because it's so fast paced, it's obviously not a chore to read. That keeps the pace up. But the chapters are so short. Some of the chapters in here are like 3 pages. The maximum length of a chapter is like 10. But honestly, like then this one here is like 4 pages, so I'm flying through it super quickly. So I guess if I could finish this today, that would be great, but obviously not holding out hope for that because we all know I'm not that kind of girl. So it's 2:30ish and I have just finished editing the vlog up today, but alongside doing that, I've also made it 215 pages into Lost in Time, so I feel like I'm making really good time. I had like an hour and a half of footage that I've been through today for the vlog as well, so it's not like it was a short, easy thing to edit. And I don't know, I'm kind of optimistic that I might be able to get this finished by the end of the day. So I'm just making a cup of tea. The World Cup final, I think, is kicking off very soon, so I think that's going to be on in the background. But I am going to see how much of this I can get through. I am still enjoying it. I think the biggest draw with this for me is the fact that the chapters are so short and the pacing is so fast. If this was any more difficult to read, I don't think I would be enjoying it all that much. And something is actually really bugging me because, like I said earlier, some of these chapters are 3 pages long, yet every single one ends on this big fake cliffhanger. And I say fake because it's always kind of like a life and death moment, like with Sam in the Jurassic or Triassic actually timeline. It's like a creature emerged from the forest or the earth began to shake. But I know that you are not dying on page 120. I know you are going to be just fine. So it is a little bit eye roll worthy, and something that actually once again builds tension and builds suspense but is getting on my nerves a little bit is the fact that we alternate between the timelines. Now, when I started this book, I thought that I would be more interested in the dinosaur timeline, and I was kind of eager for that element of the book to kick in because it took a few pages for Sam to actually be transported there. But now that he's there, I'm actually very much invested in his daughter's timeline, because the dinosaur timeline does feel very much like a survivalist story, and that's just not particularly something that I'm into. It seems like this book would be the plot of an action movie, especially this dinosaur timeline, and I'm just not an action movie girl, so that element isn't doing it for me. I mentioned before that the Absalom people, like the Absalom 6 or the Absalom 4, because 2 of them are definitely out of the equation, all of them are kind of like laid out as suspects, and I'm hoping that whatever the resolution of this plot, like the person who killed Nora, whatever's going to happen to Sam, I hope we do have a very clever twist on this, because at the minute all that's really happening is all 4 of them are pushing the blame onto each other in a way where it's just kind of like, if one of you has actually done it, it's going to be a little bit disappointing because it won't be unexpected or particularly interesting, I feel, because of how the blame has been pushed around so much throughout the beginning of this. We'll see how the second half plays out, but it is good so far, with just a couple of things that aren't completely doing it for me. To everyone's surprise, myself included, I did actually finish Lost in Time last night. I was done before 9 p.m. as well. It wasn't like usual where like it's 1 in the morning and I've had to like read the last 30 pages really quickly so that I can go to sleep. I finished this at 9 p.m. and pretty much immediately after I updated you guys on my progress, this book took a turn in a direction that I wasn't expecting, that was like 10,000 times more interesting than the place that it had been, even though it was kind of repetitive, which you'll understand if you've read this book. So I did end up really enjoying it. If you are watching this video because you want to know if you want to pick this up, there's not a whole ton of dinosaurs in here. The dinosaur element of this is actually very minimal. It takes a while to get there, and before long it kind of just like fades away. So if you're going into this looking for this past timeline full of dinosaurs, absolutely probably very much not the book for you. But as I mentioned earlier, surprisingly, the dinosaur timeline is not one that I was particularly interested in anyway. Something that I really liked about this is that it did do what I wanted from it, which was provide something like twisty and turny and complex while dealing with time travel. Because when you deal with time travel, shit immediately gets complicated, and I liked the actual representation of that. The end goal of the story, the thing that everyone kind of ended up working towards, I mean, not my favorite, but I enjoyed the journey of getting there. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars, which there was potential there almost for it to become a 4, but the writing in here is pretty bland. At one point we were reading the word counterpart like a minimum of 5 times per page. Every time Sam encountered a new dinosaur, it was immediately compared to a T-Rex, like, oh, it looks like a T-Rex but its nose is longer, or it looks like a T-Rex but it's smaller. And I'm like, okay, I will admit I don't know a great deal about dinosaurs, but I have more than a T-Rex as my point of reference. So the writing in here was truly nothing special. It did hurt my brain a little bit with the way that the science was kind of dumped in here in parts. There's like no character development. The characters are just the vehicles through which the story is told. Completely plot driven book. If you like a fast paced book, kind of like a thriller that's got some twists and turns in there and will keep you turning pages, definitely worth the read. But almost because of that, I swear I think I've edited it out pretty well, but the amount of times that I've been doing a vlog update and being interrupted by a delivery throughout the course of this vlog is like truly astounding. But what was I even saying? Super fast paced, super compelling, but almost because of that, I didn't rate this book especially highly, because it's very much like a fun time while I was reading this, but I know within a month the fine details of this are going to fade from my mind. It's like, it was entertaining at the time of reading it, but it absolutely isn't going to stick with me. Like, I definitely don't get that feeling from this book. So it's a good job actually, or is it, that I let my Goldsboro subscription run longer than I was supposed to, because I got behind. Because at the 1 year point of the subscription, so we have read 1 year of books from Goldsboro now, these are the results, and the pass mark for this subscription is half of the books have to be 4 stars or above. Now, I am going to still be doing a wrap-up video on this vlog series when I eventually get to a point where I've read all of the books that I currently have. We're going to accelerate these as well. I'm going to be doing them more frequently to catch up to the amount of books that I actually have left. And the pass mark is going to be 50%. And I'm going to do a wrap-up video kind of evaluating everything that we've done during this series. But I think it's interesting that we have all 4s and 3s, a few DNFs, no 2 stars, although in hindsight, and we'll talk about this in the wrap up, there is at least one that I would maybe move to a 2 in hindsight, and no 5s. But in terms of this particular installment, interesting results again. Is this the first time that I've been writing my prediction and actually enjoying the book that I thought that I would enjoy the most? Really enjoyed this one. This has been one of the gems of the entire subscription, and I'm really glad that I enjoyed this as much as I thought I was going to. Those couple of instances of fat phobia still getting to me though, not because it's fat phobia necessarily, because there's a lot of books I read that has shit like that in that I overlook, but just because it felt so bizarre and unnecessary that I'm confused about it. Absolutely my least favorite book of this vlog was Ordinary Monsters, which I did think was going to be in the middle. This had a lot of potential. The writing was decent. I liked the atmosphere, but ultimately it was just too long and too boring. I've already forgotten a lot of the fine details, and I absolutely will not be continuing with this series. And then right bang in the middle, we have Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. This this one was a good time while I was reading it. It was entertaining, it was fast paced, it was compelling, but it's definitely not one that's going to stick with me. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with books like that. That's the sole reason why I read thrillers. My issue with it in this context, I guess, thinking about it, is that I don't want a book like that in a signed and numbered first edition, because it's not a book that has any longevity for me. It's not a book that I'm going to look at on my shelves and like have nice feelings about. If we got to the 2-year mark of me owning this book, probably would not be able to remember a single thing about it aside from dinosaurs and time travel. So that is a wrap on the 4th installment of Is the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship Worth My Money? This has been a long old vlog, guys. I actually think that this is the longest reading vlog, maybe the longest video. No, it's not the longest video because I have a book haul that's like 90 minutes, but I think that this is the longest vlog that I've ever made on my channel. Does this video need to be as long as it is? You guys tell me. I actually have no idea, but I do hope you've enjoyed it because I know that you enjoy a long vlog. And next week I was actually going to do a Christmas romance vlog, but I actually just don't want to. I'm not feeling festive at all. It's less than a week till Christmas now, and I'm not feeling festive at all. So we're just gonna read some stuff off my TBR, and we will, fingers crossed, time allowing, which time should be fine, but we will be revisiting the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship in January for the 5th installment. But I do hope you guys have enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're a go and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.